Welcome to Built to Finish. I'm your host, Stephen Pivnik. Join me each week as we explore the journeys of audacious goal setters. This includes experienced founders, CEOs, and entrepreneurs sharing pivotal moments that propel their success. We'll also be talking with endurance athletes who push the limits of physical and mental ability. This show is brought to you by Acresis, offering tailored, high-impact advisory services to help founders get to their finish line with a strategic acquisition or majority investor recapitalization. Let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to a special holiday episode of the Built to Finish podcast. Today's guest is yours truly, me. I just wanted to take a few moments to say thank you and share some appreciation. It's been a wild year. I have so much to be thankful for, and I have so many people to thank. But I'll try to keep it as short as possible. I really haven't been blogging much about my adventures this year, so I'll use this episode to recap some of the crazy races and adventures that I participated in as well. Speaking of crazy adventures, this book project has totally exceeded my expectations. I am so grateful for all the incredible support I've received. I'm blown away that I hit #1 on the Amazon bestseller list on launch night and stayed #1 for 3 or 4 days following launch. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all of the support around the book. 1 week prior to the book launch, I participated in an event called Ultraman Florida. Some people call it a race. I mean, technically it is a race. It's a triathlon. I call it an I call it an endurance festival. It's a 3-day triathlon. The first day starts with a 6.2-mile swim, followed by a 90-mile bike. The second day is a 170-mile bike ride. And the last day is a double marathon, a 54-mile run. I completed days 1 and 2 without any issues. I was super stoked that I was finally going to cross the finish line because I didn't complete the race the prior year. But unfortunately, my body conked out at mile 48 on the run. I was so close and I fell a little bit short, mainly due to nutrition, which taught me an incredibly important lesson on how to properly hydrate and eat for these multi-day endurance events. So I got a lot further than I got the prior year. And in my book, this is unfinished business. So I will be back. Coincidentally, while I was in Florida, I got in touch with Mike Riley. So Mike Riley, who is the voice of Ironman, gave me a fantastic endorsement for my book. Business is tough. Ironman is tough. Built to Finish is a must read for anyone who needs guidance in building their path to the finish line. Thank you again, Mike, for that incredible endorsement. So we got in touch while I was in Florida, and he asked me if my audiobook was coming out soon. Coincidentally, it had just finished being recorded and was about to be launched. And I said, hey, you know what? Let me give this a shot. Let me ask Mike if he's interested in recording it instead. And he agreed. So I scrapped the recording that was already completed and worked out a deal to go down to San Diego and record the audiobook with Mike, which was a super fun project. And we released the audiobook later in the year. While we were in San Diego for the recording, my wife and I, with some friends, went to Tijuana. And this is for another podcast or another blog post, but we nearly got detained by authorities in Mexico for crossing the line at the border. So, lesson learned, don't cut the line when coming back into the United States from Tijuana. Shortly after that trip, I applied to and got accepted on a Mount Everest expedition with Alpenglow Expeditions, led by a world-renowned climber named Adrian Ballinger. And I say applied and got accepted because yes, technically you can go to Everest, you can hire some Sherpas, pay the fee to the government for your climbing permit and go up by yourself. But I refused to take that upon myself. I wanted to go with a super reputable expedition company. And more importantly, I wanted to go with a company that was going to, as much as possible, ensure my safety, with a summit being a huge bonus. And I'm very confident that I have chosen wisely. And I am thrilled and honored that they accepted me to go on that expedition with them in May of next year. So that's going to be super exciting. Next up was a very challenging and fun hike in the Grand Canyon called Rim to Rim. This is where we started on the north side, hiked down into the Grand Canyon, across the Grand Canyon, and up the south side. It was about 24 miles from rim to rim, over 10,000 feet of elevation change, and took us around 15 to 16 hours to complete. It was incredibly hot, excruciatingly hot in the middle of the summer, and there was like I said, a ton of elevation change. Humongous lesson learned there was hydration. One of my friends who actually organized this hike made a really rookie mistake and did not hydrate enough. He didn't start drinking until he started getting thirsty. And that's a huge mistake. When you're doing these types of endurance events, you need to be drinking all of the time, whether or not you're thirsty. It got sketchy at times because he got into really bad shape, but we all made it and lived to tell the story. So it was a fun hike and great training for the Everest trip that was coming up. After that was an awesome charity bike ride called the Empire State Ride to End Cancer. 300 of us rode over 550 miles over 7 days from New York City to Niagara Falls. It was an incredible event. I met a lot of great people, heard a lot of great speeches from the organizers, highly motivational, inspirational, and I'm glad that we raised over $2 million dollars for cancer research. In September, I raced a crazy triathlon called SOS, Survival of the Shawshanks in New Paltz, New York. Most triathlons are swim, bike, run. This triathlon was bike, 35 very hilly miles, followed by a run, swim, run, swim, run, swim, run. You heard that correctly. A lot of run swims. What's interesting is there no ability to change clothes in between the swims and the runs. So you're swimming and running in the same gear, in the same sneakers repeatedly. Super, super challenging event. Unfortunately, I had a bunch of stomach issues that day, and my race ended after I completed the bike. So again, this goes into the unfinished business category, and I will be back to complete SOS one day. Now, just to prove that crazy runs in my family, my sister signed us up for an event called Everest-ing. Not Mount Everest, but Everest-ing. Mount Everest is 29,029 feet high. The Everest-ing event is one where they rent out a ski resort and you have to ascend, hike up from bottom to top of the ski resort, the equivalent of 29,029 feet. They have these across multiple ski resorts in the country before skiing season starts, and we chose Stratton, Vermont. Stratton, Vermont is 1,750 feet in elevation gain from bottom to top, so we needed to ascend it 17 times in a 36-hour period. We completed it. It was grueling, and it was an incredible bonding experience for me and my sister. So thank you, Ange, for signing us up for this. But please don't do this again. We both have vowed to ourselves that we were super happy that we got this done, but we will not be attempting this again. But in my mind, never say never. 1 week after completing everything, while still recovering, I had a speaking gig at FSU in Florida. Since I was going to Florida, I decided to look up the schedule for Ironman. And coincidentally, Ironman Florida was being held that same exact weekend. So I said to myself, why not get another Ironman in? It didn't go as well as I thought it would. I had made the rookie mistake of not doing a practice swim just so I can test out the waters and more specifically, make sure that I was comfortable in my wetsuit. I had gained a couple of pounds over the summer, and my wetsuit was incredibly tight and super constricting. So I had a super hard time breathing during the swim. It was a 2.4-mile swim divided into two loops. During the first loop, I barely made it around, and I really had a hard time breathing. I said to myself, you know what? I want to prove that it was the suit and not my endurance that was preventing me from completing the swim. So I tore off the wetsuit, literally threw it into the garbage because I was so frustrated, and did the next loop without a wetsuit, without the added buoyancy, and I completed the swim. So super happy that I got out of the water with before the cutoff time. I got onto my bike and at about the 50-mile mark, the aid station started running out of water and gels. So I said, okay, so I continued to the next aid station at mile 70 approximately. They still didn't have any water and still didn't have any gels. I was running on fumes at this point and felt that it would be completely unsafe to continue in a dehydrated, exhausted, and tired state. So myself and about a dozen or 20 folks, in addition to me, bailed at that point and took a DNF. Super, super unfortunate that a race like Ironman, which I've never experienced before, ran out of supplies at an aid station. Unfortunately, that's number three in the unfinished category for the year. But, they can't all be wins. They are all learnings and great data points on how to do better next time around. So after returning from Florida, I started really taking my training for Mount Everest seriously. And in addition to all of the weight and endurance training that I was doing, I needed to start getting some serious hikes and or climbs in. So after doing some research, I found out about this mountain called Chimborazo in Ecuador. Chimborazo happens to be the highest place on Earth. Now, you may say Everest is the highest place. Well, Everest is technically the tallest at 29,029 feet, but because the Earth is warped at the equator, Chimborazo, at only 20,000 feet high, is actually closer to the sun than Everest. So I'll be going to Chimborazo in January as a training hike, which should be a lot of fun. This year also had all the usual fun and games with amazing trips with friends and family. Love you all beyond words. I am forever grateful for all of your ongoing support. Thank you. On the business front, I'm happy to report that a 3-year project I was working on with Acresis came to a successful end. We helped a founder of a software company realize the value of his creation by going through a strategic acquisition process. Mike, I am so happy for you, and I want to thank you very much for the trust that you put in me and into Acresis for helping you achieve your goals. To wrap this up, I just wanted to add that it wasn't all fun and games. Unfortunately, there were many health issues that my family and I were faced with during the year. I won't go into any details, but I just wanted to stress that this is a constant reminder that we all need to stay as healthy as we possibly can. I just want to stress that there are so many things that we can control, and it's a shame not to. So please, please stay as healthy as you possibly can. Thank you so much for tuning into this holiday episode. I greatly appreciate the support I'm receiving on this podcast. I am blown away by the quality of guests that I've had so far. And more importantly, I am further blown away by the lineup that I have. Spoiler alert, I can't really mention the names yet, but there's going to be some incredibly interesting episodes that are coming up. So please like and subscribe to this podcast. You're not going to regret it. These folks and personalities and their accomplishments are just nothing short of incredible. I want to thank all the listeners for your support so far. I want to thank all my friends and family, especially my wife and my daughters, for their ongoing and endless support for all of my craziness and all of my adventures. I look forward to continuing this podcast into the new year and bringing you some really enjoyable content. And lastly, I just want to wish everybody a happy and healthy new year. All the best. That's a wrap for this episode of Built to Finish. Thank you for tuning in. For show notes and more details, head over to podcast.stephenpivnik.com. Special thank you to our sponsor, Acresis, offering tailored, high-impact advisory services to help founders get to their finish line with a strategic acquisition or majority investor recapitalization. Catch you next week.